Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for this NFT art panel. I'm your moderator, Vivienne Chow. I'm an arts and culture journalist, and I have been covering art world at large. And now, of course, we have to talk about the NFT world. So joining us today, we have Kit Hong, who's now in London, and Justin Lim, who's now in Hong Kong. So welcome and thank you very much for joining us today. And well, I myself, I'm now based in London, and so it's a whole new experience, and I guess it's more or less the same for a whole lot of people. And it's great to also, be kind of like a reunion because I've known Kit for a very long time. Nearly 20 years, and Justin Justin I met in Hong Kong, and we have a lot of interaction over Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, so please follow Justin. And okay, so today's topic, I would like to ask both of you about the journey of venturing into the NFT world, especially coming from working with the traditional medium. So Kit is a filmmaker, as a film director, and so Kit has made a lot of great films and has won numerous awards. And Justin is a very successful photographer, both in the media and also commercially. So I think I would first start with this panel discussion with a short interview with each of you, and then we'll move into a group discussion, and to look into the kind of experience and the journey that you have been through. So maybe I start with Justin. Is that okay? Um,
Hi,
so
yeah, that's
Justin,
fine.
you have been. Can you tell us a bit about your background as a photographer and
Uh, so I would say I come from a very non-traditional background in terms of being in the creative arts. I actually went to law school, but when I was in law school, I was, doing photography on the side. It was never something that struck me that, it can kind of end up being your career. But when I came back to Hong Kong, I realized, well, I don't like being a lawyer. So I kind of pivoted and went into photography because I had a couple of friends who were running studios here. Um, and then at that time, this is sort of pre-Instagram days, like 20 years ago. I think posting photos on social media started to become a thing, and I was probably one of the early adopters in Hong Kong. So I would be on the photo walks and meeting people, and there sort of became this very clear distinction between professional photography on the one hand, but also this whole new world of social media photography and photo sharing and that aspect of it. So there was kind of a division in terms of how I structured my photography in that sense. But very exciting in a way because I got over the last 2 decades I've met a lot of very interesting people on social media, and then so that's sort of the one arm of it, and then on the other side you have the professional side, where obviously I've worked with a lot of brands. I've shot hundreds of weddings and events and babies. I have a studio here in Hong Kong as well, so I kind of look at my photography journey in that way. It's like kind of two different arms of it, and probably the NFT side of it, which we'll come on to. It goes more to the social media side than the professional side. But yeah, it's no less interesting. It's been a very interesting journey.
That's great to hear, and we'll get into the NFT discussion in a bit. And Kit, so I think maybe can you introduce yourself, to our audience, and all the great films that you have made.
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Kit Hong, and I'm from Hong Kong, and I'm stationed in London right now. I like to start from the very beginning, but very quick. I have a design degree, but while I'm in my undergrad studies, I was always taught how technology will influence our habit or our interpretations or perceptions around the world. So I was really aware of how technology affect or influence my work. So after I graduated, I actually went to Chicago to study video art. So video art has always been in the edge of film and video, the traditional or commercial film and video productions. Keep influencing the mainstream, how they look at the technology and how they look at pictures and digital media. So after I graduated, I go back to Hong Kong, and then I started, develop my career along the side of filmmaking, commercial music videos, something like that. And but at the same time, I never give up, noticing how in the margin how the new technology is going to influence our form of art. So I started to know about the recent 3D films or 360 degree video and then virtual reality. And just 2 years ago, I started to learn about the idea of decentralization, which is coming from the cryptocurrency ideas. And then slowly I learned about NFT. Um, how it works and how it kind of act as kind of like a cyber archive for all the art. So I'm actually working. I'm actually taking NFT as a form of archive. I'm putting all my old video art piece right now. I'm trying to experimenting with the media as well.
That's really interesting. And I believe that venturing into NFT, I think it's quite recent. I mean, it's still very new, and I've seen how Justin has been growing his work and his collection on Twitter, and it's really amazing. Congratulations, um, and I think we would like to know, how like, okay, first of all, do you consider yourself, being quite successful since you have like sold out quite a bit, and how do you find it?
Uh, I don't want to come here and say that it's been such like a resounding success. I think a lot of it is just kind of, I won't say it's luck, but a lot of it is kind of finding where your niche is and kind of understanding the market a bit, because there are some photographers who take, I would say, the style of photos that are very instantly collectible. I'm not saying that's even me, actually. I think my photos are probably a bit more esoteric in that way, a little bit more unique. Whereas I see there's some photographers who actually take really good photos as well, but they don't have a big market in the NFT world because I think they maybe lack the marketing skill. Maybe they lack the connections. So the one thing that, again, maybe we can come on to this, but I think in the NFT world, it's very. I can't speak for say with the other forms of art, but I think with photography, it's very important how you position yourself and what marketplaces you're using, what connections you have, because a lot of it, as you've seen on Twitter, a lot of my sales have come through that kind of avenue where you're connecting directly to the buyer, and then the buyer wants to know kind of what is the resonance of the collection, and then because he has that direct connection to you via social media, then that's kind of how some of the sales take place. um, but I've got three collections out at the moment, so there's kind of been a different approach with every one of them. um, yeah.
Right. And yeah, I do think that like how you position yourself and how you um I don't like using the word marketing, but then
Hmm.
essentially it is.
Yeah.
You really have to put yourself out there. I have spoken to a lot of NFT artists, and um because there are so many of them. I mean, if you go on
Yeah.
OpenSea or any other platform, it's saturated with tons
Yeah.
of creative work, and a lot of them are great, and but then how
Yeah.
do you manage to stand out? I think you need to put yourself a lot of work, and I feel that that's the majority of the time that's been spent. It's about how you put yourself out there in
Mm-mm.
addition to creating work. Would you agree?
Yeah. So maybe if I just kind of go through how I came into this world, I think I was lucky because again, through my many years of social media use, I have become very friendly with a chap called Evgeny, who's the founder of 500px. So 500px is a very famous photo sharing site, probably only second to Instagram, or definitely in the top 3 to 5 in the world. And now his new venture is a website called Slowika. So for people who are not aware of Slowika, essentially it operates as a marketplace for only photography NFTs. So obviously the idea was kind of to come out of OpenSea and these kind of wider markets and to come up with a more curated marketplace. So I was very lucky because now, there are hundreds of photographers who are trying to get onto Slowika because at the moment it's still operating on the basis of a very selective policy. But because I'm uh, the founder of the website is very familiar with my work, I was lucky enough to receive an invitation. So I was one of the first 3 photographers to drop on the website, and since then they've obviously featured hundreds of photographers. So how the journey began was he approached me and he said, "Look, I know you're because I traded Ethereum a little bit. I'm not completely unfamiliar with the cryptocurrency scene." But so he approached me, and then we kind of talked about what we would do as a collection. So actually, the first thing I proposed actually was rejected, and I thought, look, this NFT world, I should it's going to be quite like open for me to give him a collection that I feel is quite consistent. But he said, no, 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 this doesn't work in the NFT world. It has to be something that looks collectible. So this is actually what you see here. So this is eventually was what came out of it. My first collection, which we called Girl and Camera. So it was a 20 photo collection. And what we did was we tried to kind of follow what was going on the more graphical side of the NFTs, like how you see like with the apes and the dinosaurs and the monkeys and everything. We tried to kind of just vary it based on a few different traits. So the series is a portrait series, but you see the girl, the model, is actually holding a different camera in each one. We adjusted the lighting for each one. So you kind of have these traits, and we wanted to build these kind of traits into the collection to make it more collectible so that people wouldn't look at the collection and say, oh, this is just like a set of random photos. There actually is some kind of method behind it. So, like I said, I was the third photographer to drop on that website, and very fortunately, obviously sold out. And since then, they've featured hundreds of photographers. So it feels like I think when we were doing it at that time, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying this. Evgeny was not as experienced as he is now at handling the market, and so we didn't have as much of a direct connection to the buyers. But now, definitely, the photographers who are dropping on that website are very connected to the buyers. And then obviously you have the intermediary who's setting up those sales. So yeah, it's a very good marketplace. And so then because of that success, if you can call it that, that was then what led to my second collection, OpenSea, which now has sold quite a few as well. And I have a very minor collection on Foundation as well. So that's kind of where the journey began. And then I'm saying this like I'm some veteran, but it's only really been like 6, 7 months. And
Already a veteran.
as I got more familiar with the market, that was when obviously the Twitter thing happened, and you started to connect more with the buyers directly. So with my second series, the one on OpenSea, the Hong Kong Stories collection, that one was very. It's been interesting. It hasn't sold out yet, but it's sold about 14 or 15 pieces. And
Wow.
there, I've actually noticed that there's some pretty prominent buyers who picked it up. So we're talking about people in the Twitter space who have like several 100,000 followers, and who are considered these sort of whales. So I think that was an interesting experience because I think at the time when we did the first collection, this one, we weren't thinking so much like, oh, what does it mean to be collected by a certain person? It was just like you're just happy that it's sold, or just happy that it's sold out at all. And now I think we're at the point where, through Twitter, there's a lot of communication with the buyer. And, I've even had some very important buyers on Twitter kind of contact me directly and say, which one of the collection do you think I should collect? Or, so you get that kind of approach as well.
Amazing. Amazing. Because I think the way how it evolves, it sounds like I think now it's becoming more and more the way how the traditional art world operates in a way. At least based on Justin's experience, because I mean, with in the traditional art world, and you work with a gallery, and then you have the gallery as your agent, and they put your work out there, so they do all the publicity, marketing, and sales dealing for you. And it's just that now you have to do it yourself, but then essentially, because the way you talked about how you build your own collection. And this is what a gallery would probably be telling an artist. Okay, maybe advising an artist. Okay, what kind of work that maybe you can consider creating, and how you can create a body of work that's actually meaningful, so that when someone buys your work and or collect your work, then it actually makes sense to them that this is a collectible piece. And it sounds like the way how you are positioning yourself, it's similar. It sounds similar towards that direction, but then it's not, but that is just happening in a digital space. Does it make sense?
Yeah. That makes sense. There's this kind of thing where at first when I got involved, you obviously feel a little bit lost. So it's not like having a gallery relationship where obviously there's someone who kind of babysits you through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Definitely on OpenSea, it felt more like just the Wild West at that point. You didn't really know what was going on in the early days. But now, like I say, with the other marketplaces that are appearing, like say, Sloika, which I keep name dropping, but obviously I would because I sold most of my NFTs through them. But for example, now when they onboard photographers, it is very much like a gallery in that sense because they have a team of dedicated staff who kind of work the whole process with you. They teach you how to mint. They teach you what you need to be aware of in terms of the traits and the properties of the photography. They connect buyers to you. So again, I think it's I think as you're aware, I think NFT photography was a little bit later on the curve than some of the other art forms. But we're now seeing a point where it's developing, and people are not just buying things for the sake of it. They want to know that maybe there's a bit of history behind it, that this photographer has some kind of gravitas or some quality. And that's why they would go through, as you say, maybe find people who, again, to use your anecdote, I think that the kind of gallery kind of thing, yeah, like kind of go through a more structured environment, if that's the right way to say it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's gonna happen. It will be developed towards or maybe along those lines, or it will be more probably be more structured.
Yeah.
And Kit, so I would like to ask you, and I mean, because your work, so you're moving image, and I guess it's the right term to describe
Yeah.
your genre, and that includes feature length film, and also video art, basically any images that moves. And and so I'm looking at your collection, your work on OpenSea. So now I'm just wondering, how it has been for you, because I think because Justin's work is photography, but then yours is moving image. Does it make a difference? And how you select or what you pick to be to turn them into NFTs, and how how you plan to market yourself, because apparently it's very important to market yourself in this area.
I think for the actual, like, for the current market right now, moving images has been traditionally not being considered as a very popular form of for collectors to collect. Like, moving images is more or less for museum or like an exhibition space. So I definitely feel it's more challenging, even though in the current NFTs market, that how I'm going to position myself as an artist that's produced moving images. So at the moment, I am taking I'm using the NFT space as kind of like a unique archive for myself to, put up some of my old work, because some of my old works was in film festival or different museum and gallery before, and then they wasn't what, but then, like, after a certain period, they just sit in my studio sometimes. So I'm kind of like using this NFT platform, and then I kind of recreate a short clip, say like a 5 second or 10-second clips of this that represent my work, and then I'll just put it on NFT, and then also write the I'll also kind of write the history, the festival screenings, and then my intention at that time during when I create the work, as like in the description. So I'm kind of like putting up but at the moment I have like one series in OpenSea, and then it's from a work that I made actually 20 years ago. During this time, we were still dealing with, like, this early internet technology, which usually we see, like, when the bandwidth is actually not strong enough, we see pixelated images. So I'm kind of like trying to put that kind of pixelated images back in the 2022 time with the very smooth technologies. It kind of reminded people of how technology was before, and then it has to be presented in moving images, because when we just receive like a pixelated picture, we usually found it not good quality. But when it's moving in a way that's actually reminded us of how technology was 20 years ago. And then I also put them in kind of like, if you remember, like Microsoft Net Meeting. It was like an early FaceTime kind of program. So it was actually the first time when I connect with my partner. Me and my partner have been married 20 years already. So me and my partner met through Net Meeting with that kind of pixelated time. So sometimes we just see each other pixelated, and like totally pixelated. So I'm kind of putting that kind of nostalgic and kind of like an old technology kind of form into my series. So it become one kind of like a nostalgic series that I want to put. Like in response to what Justin said, I think I really enjoy the community of NFT right now. I actually start stepping into the NFT world via the introduction of my friend, and then I'm kind of in different NFT artist community now. They are all like trying to market themselves. Some of them is still trying to reach their client at the moment. But then I really enjoy how the community of artists trying to push their talent and try to put up their work and reaches different audience. I've been in the gallery and museum community for a while, and I think they are extremely exclusive. So not everyone could be very lucky to work with a very big gallery or museum in order to get market out. So I think the NFT platform at the moment is a very very good way for the artists to connect with their audience, with their buyers directly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it more it's also along the lines of a decentralized
Exactly.
operation. And because when in the traditional art world, you have the gallery, and sometimes art advisors, now more art advisors and
Mm,
consultants, and so they would filter the work,
mhm,
on behalf of a client or a collector.
exactly.
But now, I think people would be more interested in having direct communication. I think people are always interested to have direct communication with the artists and the creators, and to talk, to communicate directly, and have and also to kind of have a kind of a relationship being built. Again, you can
Mhm,
discuss certain things that normally you cannot, you can't talk about with your other friends. And so it's indeed a very special kind of bonding, and I think this is what people are looking for
mm,
in this sort of the NFT community.
community.
um Yes, it's more like a community. But then I also want to know if you have, either of you have run into any special or any bad experiences. Because recently, I just finished a story that's going to come out next week. Well, it will be coming out in ArtNet news. That so I talked to several people in the NFT world and asking them about how they can protect themselves. And I think this is very important because I mean, many people obviously have had this kind of experiences, having their work being stolen, or facing IP infringement, and people impersonating them, or even stealing from their wallet and their collection. There's some people have lost like the entire gallery.
Mm.
It also happens. So I'm just wondering, if you have heard of some outrageous stories, and how do you protect yourself in this in this wild west? Justin?
Yeah, I've been relatively lucky. I don't think I've had too many negative experiences. Like a lot of people that once I kind of accumulated a bit of proceeds from the sales, I started to then reinvest in other people's work. There were a couple of times where I clicked some not very good links and maybe lost like a minor amount, but I think that was maybe like early on when you were less careful, when you were going through the discords and you weren't as careful with everything. And then I think also it's kind of good because now I've sold about 37 pieces, if I'm correct. So I think at the beginning, like I said before, there was this connection with sort of like more important buyers. I think one thing that happened was that you're now seeing a point at where this market has matured, and people are collecting because they want the connection to a prominent photographer or videographer or whatever. But yes, I think one thing that did happen was when I sold out my first collection, Girl and Camera here. Then I released the second one, Hong Kong. Then people were more aware of the second one on OpenSea, Hong Kong Stories. So I did have some people who kind of jumped in and bought a few of the pieces, but you knew their intention was not to collect to be close to you. Their thinking was that somehow if they bought it, they can flip it quickly on the secondary market. They can make a bit of money. So I did encounter one or two of those kind of buyers who got a bit frustrated that, oh, why hasn't it suddenly shot up in value or whatever? And then I saw they had actually sold. There was one guy who bought two of my pieces, and then he then sold those two pieces for a lower price. I think because he just got frustrated that within 1 month it hadn't sold or whatever. But that was fine for me because I get secondary royalties on
Mhm.
OpenSea. So to me, it didn't matter that much that he sold them. But for example, like I remember when he first contacted me, he was very sincere, saying like, "Oh, I love your work. I really I'm glad to be a collector of yours." So you have a little bit of those kind of experiences too. But then I think now I would say the majority of people who bought from me, I have some form of connection with. There's some kind of dialogue. Um, yeah, of course there are negative aspects to it too. Um, Again, I can't speak for Kit in the cinematography world. I think in the photography world, if I'm going to be honest, I mean this happened even in the Instagram days when we're not necessarily selling our photos for pure profit. Of course, once I sold 30 something pieces, you're bound to also come across a lot of jealousy. Some photographers wonder why they haven't made any sales in 6 months. And they're like, what's so good about this guy? Um, so you come across things like that, but I think the overwhelming feeling, as I think Kit also mentioned, is I really love being part of this community now. I've been on Instagram a long time, and I think Instagram kind of come to the end of that era, and now you're seeing this new era emerge on OpenSea and Twitter. And I'm actually connecting with a lot of photographers whose work I respect completely. And now we have dialogues and we have friendships and we have plans to meet up later this year if we can fly. And that excites me because it's like 10 years ago on Instagram when it was starting out. In the early days on Instagram, I would meet a lot of people, not necessarily people whose work is even like yours, but just people that you think that you would strike up a rapport or camaraderie with. And I think that is the exciting thing about the NFT world now, that I've come to a point where I'm again starting to build relationships with people. And like you said, we all support each other. I mean, of course, I won't sit here and lie that there isn't some form of financial motive. Of course, if you if you sell, there's obviously that aspect where you profit out of it. But then I think a lot of the photographers in particular have also made it their mission to then reinvest. So, for example, when I sold out this collection, um, they then they run Sloika run a program where they support young artists who don't have money to mint, the gas fees, and so on and so forth. And so I put some of my Ethereum back into that to support young 18, 19-year-old photographers who are looking to get a start in the world. So I think that aspect has been quite gratifying because I've seen some collections that have a very charitable endeavor, which I think is good because photography for too long, if we're going to be honest, on say Instagram, it's become a little bit kind of shallow and blasé, and you see the same thing over and over again. And I think with the NFT thing, we can kind of put more of a social aspect behind it, which I like. You can put a more of a charitable endeavor or something that means something to you.
Absolutely. And what about you, Kit?
I think what I don't have any bad experience to share so far. It's really good, but I really resonates with what Justin said. Like there is kind of like a social thing behind, and then there is like a force of supporting young community. I feel like the whole NFT communities actually need more education as well. We might actually have a complete different understanding of what ownership is, and also a completely different understanding of what copyright is in the future. I can tell because there's a lot of say music that is actually on NFT that you can declare ownership, but at the same time you will be the one who actually share it. And then so there'll be a complete different understanding of copywriting and ownership of art piece in the future, and this definitely need a lot of education for a lot of us to spread that idea around.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, this is an evolving and it's an evolving and ongoing process, and it's going to revolutionize the way we look at ownership. And I totally agree. And I talked about this, with an art collector recently about how we view ownership. How we view ownership differently, and do you have to have a physical object hung on the wall in order to feel that kind of ownership, or does it exist only just on your in the virtual space, and then that is already enough. And I guess we will have
Exhibition
a lot.
space as well.
Yeah, and also exhibition space. And how do you show an NFT work, or do you even have to show it? I think that's that there's a lot of interesting questions that are that will be answered in the future. And I guess we should wrap up now. And but thank you so much, Kit and Justin, for joining us here today. And if you're watching this, please go follow Justin and Kit's work, and we'll find a way to put their links in the chat here. And so hopefully, or we'll get a chance to come back together and to take a look at the progress of your work next time.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Vivienne.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, NFTCON. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.